So today's Daf Yomi is Nazir Daf Lamedawa, Nazir 34, and we're going to start on the bottom of 34b. As we start the new chapter, the chapter is called Shlosha Minin. There are three types of things that are Asurim bin Nazir. There are three types of items that are prohibited for a Nazirite to get involved in. What are the three items? Atuma, the Nazirite is prohibited to come in contact with a dead body. Vatiklachas, the Nazirite is prohibited to get a haircut. Vayotze min hagefen, the Nazirite is prohibited to eat or drink anything that comes from the grape vine. V'kol min hagefen mitzdarfen zenzeh, and anything that comes out of the grapevine is going to be combined with another item that comes out of the grapevine in order to raise it to the prohibited amount, in order for it to be prohibited. You're only going to be liable, says the Talmud, if you eat an olive-size amount from this grapes. So you need to eat an olive-size amount from the grapes in order to be liable. The Mishnah Rishona, the earlier Mishnah said, and this is a very powerful phrase, there's an earlier Mishnah which the Talmud is acknowledging that we reject. There's an earlier Mishnah, and what is the Mishnayos that are in front of us were arranged by Rabbi Yehuda and Nasi, but now we're being given insight that over several generations, beginning from the Anshe Knesset Agdola, we're being given insight, like 500 years before Rebbe, there were different teachings. And our Mishnah here is bringing an earlier position, which it's rejecting. The Mishnah Rishona tells us, Ad sheyishter revias yayin. It says, no, that you're liable not by eating an olive-sized amount, but you're liable for eating a larger amount, which was a revias of wine, a quarter lug of wine, which comes out to around an egg and a half. So that's larger. So they gave you more leeway, but then our later Mishnah rejected that for saying it's an olive-sized amount. Whereas Rabbi Akiva says, "Afilu shara pito b'yayin v'yesh b'kadei tzaref kazayas chayev." This is the concept. Rabbi Akiva says, even if you soak the bread into the wine, and together they make an olive-sized amount, that's going to be enough to make you liable for the lashes. And this is the concept of what we call heter mitzdaref le'isur, that if you have something permitted and it combines with a prohibited item, then the prohibited item is itself going to be prohibited. So here we have the permitted bread, and then the prohibited amount is the wine. So if you soak the wine in the bread itself adds on to make the whole item considered prohibited. And we see from here, it's a very important and deep concept. On a technical level, it relates to kashrus, that heter mitzdaref le'isur, that something permitted can combine with something prohibited. But on a much deeper level, we're seeing here that even if something is good, if it's okay, if it's combined with something that's prohibited, the whole item becomes prohibited. The whole item becomes problematic, and that's the concept of heter mitzdaref le'isur. To remember that. So let's say you're good, but you're with a company which is bad, then you're bad. That's the whole bottom line. Let's say you're in an army unit, which is, you're a good person, but you're doing something, but the whole unit is doing something terrible. Well, now it's not just, let's say there's 5 people in the unit and 4 are doing something bad. But now it's, since even though you're heter, the 5 people are doing something bad. That's the concept of what Rabbi Akiva was saying. Even heter is mitzdaref le'isur. So therefore, now the next line of the Mishnah states, you're going to be liable for the wine on its own and on the grapes on its own. Meaning, say, let's say you just drink the wine or you just drink the grapes, that's enough to make you liable. And you're liable also just for the chartzanim. Chartzanim, we'll see there's going to be a dispute in our Mishnah. Does the chartzanim refer to the skins or does it refer to the seeds? So for now, we'll just translate it as the skin. So you're going to be liable just if you eat the skin, and also if you just eat the seeds on their own. Which Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, you have to eat a minimum of 2 skins vizag, and one seed. These are the skins and these are the seeds. The chartzanim refers to the skins, the outer part, and the zagim refers to the panemium, the inner part, i.e., the seeds. Rabbi Yehuda, where Rabbi Yotzi says, "Shalot titev." Rabbi Yotzi says, "No, the way I can teach it to you is don't make a mistake. Kezug shal behema, like the zug, like the bell of an animal. Achitzon is the zug. The outer part is the zug. The zug refers to the skin. Panemi, and the inner part is the inbal. The inbal is the inner part. So therefore, that's the fundamental. They don't. There, you see that this discussion takes place over hundreds, if not thousands, of years, and we're being told that they don't even know what these basic words from the Torah mean. The Chartzanim and the Zag. There's a fundamental dispute about what these words mean. So now we go to the Mishnah, the Gemara. Shlosh meaning asur ben Nazir. Atuma, hayotze min hagefen in gefen atzmo los. You mean to say anything that comes out of the grapevine is prohibited, but the grapevine itself, i.e., the leaves and the branches, they're going to be permitted for the Nazir to eat? Gemara says no. Well, then our Mishnah is a lot like Rabbi Elazar. The Tanya Rabbi Elazar, like we learned in the Brayso, so that what does Rabbi Elazar tell us? Tanya Rabbi Elazar taught. And Elazar taught, it's not in the Yerushalmi, the Ger says Rabbi Eliezer, but we'll go with the Bible. It says Rabbi Elazar taught a few alim v'lulavim b'mashva. He says even the leaves and the branches are going to be prohibited. So that's our Mishnah. Is not like Rabbi Elazar even prohibits the leaves and the branches. Umar says there's an alternative version of this. Ikadamrila Seifa, that the concluding clause says Eno chayav elad sheyochal min ha'navim kazayis, that you're only liable if you eat from the grapes in all size amount. That means you're liable only from the grapes, but not from the grapevine. Masisin the look Rabbi Elazar. Our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Elazar. The Tanya Rabbi Elazar says, even the leaves and the branches are included in this prohibition. So Gemara says, so Rabbi Elazar is saying that the prohibition includes even the leaves and the branches, where the Tanna Kama is saying, no, if you eat the leaves of the grapevine, you're not going to be the Nazir is not in violation of the prohibition. So what's the root of their dispute? The root of their dispute is hermeneutics, exegesis. How do we interpret the verses of the Torah? Rabbi Elazar darish riboy u'miyut. When there's a riboy, amplification, and miyut is a limitation, he expounds that. Whereas the Rabbanan darish klali u'prati, the Rabbanan expound what we're more familiar with, because we say the Bryce of Rabbi Shmuel every day. That's called the klal, a general rule followed by a specific. Klal uprat, that if there's a general rule followed by a specific, that the only thing the Torah is referring to is the specific. Klal uprat to klal, but if it's a general rule followed by a specific, followed by another general rule, then the Torah is referring to anything similar to the specific. Where if it's riboy umiyut, if it's amplification followed by a limitation, the limitation is anything that's similar to the limitation. So let's see how the Gemara reads this as follows. So Rabbi Elazar darish riboy umiyuti, Rabbanan darish klali prati. Rabbi Elazar expounds the riboy umiyuti. He learns it out from Yayin b'shechar yazir. It says in the verse, Yayin b'shechar yazir, you're not allowed to drink the wine or the aged wine. That's what a Nazir does. And then it says in the next verse in Bamidbar, Kol Yemei Nizro, Kol Asher Yasem Gefen Yayin. Now you're not allowed to drink anything from the grapevine. And then it says Mechartzanim ba'atzak, from the, let's say, the skins until the seeds. So we see from here the first thing is a limitation. Then there's an amplification. Then there's another limitation. So let's go to the text of the Talmud. Rabbi Elazar darish riboy umiyut, Rabbanan darish klali prati. Rabbi Elazar expounds riboy umiyut. He expounds the amplification and limitation from the yayin and the shechar yazir. He learns out from the yayin, the shechar yazir, from the wine and the aged wine. You have to separate yourself. That's a limitation. Miyet. Mikol asher yasem gefen yayin riba. Then anything that comes from the grapevine is an amplification. Miyet v'riba. He has a limitation followed by an amplification. Riba kol. So Rabbi Elazar says that that's including everything. Anything that's similar to the limitation is going to be included. And my riba, so therefore what's he including according to Rabbi Elazar? Riba kol mili. He's adding anything that comes from the grapevine. And my miyet, but it must be limiting something. So what's it limiting? Mi'et shabishta. It's limiting the shabishta. What's the shabishta? So the shabishta is the really hard part of the grapevine, which is really not edible. That is going to be limited from the prohibition. The Rabbanan Darshi Klal Uprati. The Rabbanan expound Klal Uprat Miyayim v'Shechar Yazir. The Rabbanan expound Klal Uprat. So how do they do a general followed by specific? It says as follows: Miyayim v'Shechar Yazir. From the wine and the aged wine, you separate yourself. That's a prat. Mikol asher yasem gefen hayayin. That's a klal. That's a general. Michartzanim v'adzag. From the skins until the seeds. Chazar uprat. Then it's going to be another limitation, another exclusion. Prat to klal prat. So this is exclusion followed by a general followed by exclusion. It's anything that's similar to the exclusion. Ma prat mefurash pri upso as pri. Just like the specific is going to be just the prat, it's explicit in the Torah, the pri, the fruit itself, and the pso as pri, the not just the fruit, but also some derivative of the fruit. So too, avkol pri upso as pri. So too, we're saying that anything that is the fruit or the derivative of the fruit is going to be prohibited. Ima prat mefurish pri gamor, avkol pri gamor. If you might say, well, maybe the prat is referring to something that comes from a completed fruit. Maybe so then we're going to say everything that's prohibited is only the completed fruit, but a fruit that's not completed, i.e. the grape is unripe yet, is not going to be prohibited for a Nazir. The Gemara says, Amers, no. The Torah gave us some space to say that something similar to the prat, and that wasn't written explicit in the Torah. And so what's that referring to? If you want to say it's referring to we want to say it's referring to the fresh grapes and the dry grapes, that's explicit. And if you want to say it's referring to yain and chumetz, the wine and the vinegar, that's also explicit. Haksive, that's also explicit in the Torah. So therefore, what's it referring to? So therefore, the only thing that you can learn out from this drasha is to say that it's teaching us that even the unripe grapes and also the unripe grapes are going to be prohibited. And that is what we're including from the prat to call prat. Okay, so then the Gemara says, we have another question. The Brisa says, there's Tosos reads it, that the Brisa is what's continuing here, not the Gemara. So therefore, according to the rabbis, we're including everything in the prohibition except for the leaves and the branches. So that's what we're including. So what's the verse adding when it says from the skins until the seeds? Meaning to say that's an exclusion. It says mechartzenim v'adzag after the limitation. The Torah is adding something. First, the Torah says that you can only not drink wine and aged wine. Then it says anything that comes from the grapes. And then it says you can't eat anything from the skin until the seeds. Or the seeds until the skin, either way. But then what's the Torah adding about that? Meaning to say, even if it had just written them together, if it had written miyayin and shecher mechartzanim v'adzag, if it had written them together and then it had written anything that comes from the grapes, we would say that it's coming to include only what's like the prat, only what's like the limitation. Because at this stage, the Gemara is understanding that when there is a limitation and a general rule, we're only including anything that's similar to it. So what's the Torah adding on by putting the general rule in between the two exclusions? So the Brisa says that if it would have written just the prat to klal, we would have just said anything that's similar to the prat, but we wouldn't have said anything that's similar to the prat. We would have said everything is included, and that's learned out from the verse. And so therefore, what's the reason why the second exclusion is written after the general rule? To teach you, that anytime you have what's called a prat or a klal, anytime you have this general followed by a specific, anytime you have a specific followed by a general, you can't pull it with you and judge to say ke'ena prat. You can't pull it forward you and to say that the general rule is coming to say that it's including anything that's similar to the limitation. The general rule is adding on. So you can't say that it's limiting until the general rule comes followed by a specific rule, and then we're saying that it's anything similar to specific, like the Torah does by a Nazir, where it says mechartzanim ba'adzak, which is an additional limitation. And the only reason why we're saying this is because we have in this case this paradigm of a Nazir, which is a prat, the limitation followed by a general rule, followed by a limitation. Therefore, we say that the general rule is coming to tell us it has to be something similar to the specific. And so too in every place, only if there's a limitation or exclusion written after the general rule, can we say that the limitation is limiting the general rule, and the general rule is coming only to say something similar to the specific. Now the Gemara, and that's what we're saying here, anything that's similar to the prat is going to be included. So that's what we've established. Basically, what we've said until now is Rabbi Elazar has said that it includes the leaves and the branches and the prohibition, and he learns it out from the amplification followed by a limitation, and so therefore he's saying it's anything that's similar to the limitation. Whereas the Rabbanan say the leaves and the branches are not included because they have prat, uklal, uprat. It has to be similar to the limitation, and that's the principle of klal to prat uklal. So Rabbi Elazar's is more expansive. He says that riboy liyut is more expansive than the klal uprat uklal. So then we're going to preach this phrase from the Brisa. Amar ma prabha first pre-upsolas pre. Afkol pre-upsolas pre. This is the line from the Brisa. So we said just like the fruit, just like the specific is mefarash pre-upsolas pre. It refers to the fruit itself and the residue of the fruit or the derivative. Also, anything that is the fruit and a derivative of the fruit is going to be prohibited for the Nazir. So we're seeing from this price that there's another fruit, upsolas pri, that is prohibited to the Nazir. What's that? I thought just grapes are prohibited. Mark explains pri, when it says in the Torah that the fruit is prohibited, that's inve, those are grapes. Psolas pri, mahi, what is the derivative of the fruit that's also prohibited? That's chometz, that's vinegar. So the grapes and the vinegar, or the wine and the vinegar. Psolas, So then it says afkol praise, and then the Brisa says also every other fruit. Mahi, what's every other fruit that's also going to be prohibited for a Nazir? This is guarke. This is the unripe grapes. Mahi, and what's the psoas? Afkol the psoas. Also the derivative of all these fruits. What's that? Amarav lasuye inve dichrin. These comes to include the grapes that got wormy. Meaning to say that's what it means, that even though the grapes are wormy, they're prohibited. The Rosh has a different version. It says inve dachtum, which is the same idea, the grapes that are wormy. So why would we think that if the grapes are wormy, they'd be prohibited? So therefore, Karen Ora wants to say that these are grapes that became ruined while they're still attached to the grapevine, different, like a diminished form of a grape. So the Gemara says, still we have a word in the Brisa that we have not expounded. Why does the Torah need to write mechartzanim ba'adzak lo yochal? Why couldn't it have written chartzam v'zag lo yochal? Why does it have to say mechartzanim v'ad zag? So Amar Avina, what does the word va'ad teach us? Very, very strange phrase. It's coming to include the parts of the grapes that are beina beinayim. So here too we have a difference of opinion that the Tosfos, some want to say that this is basically the pulp of the grape, which is strange. Isn't that exactly the fruit? What exactly are we eating? Isn't that the pulp? So that's how most want to say that's what it means. But Tosos rejects that explanation. That's basically, that's the explanation of the Mefarish and all those who came before Tosos. But then Tosos says that what it refers to the grapes that are medium-sized that grow next to the large grapes, and we know they're not going to ripen because they don't see the sun. They're basically covered up from the sun. So those are also prohibited for the Nazir. And that's what we learn out from the word ad. So the Gemara says, Amar Mar, Ima Prat Meforish Pri Gomer. This is a quotation from the Brisa. Just like the Prat is teaching us that a Pri Gomer of completed fruit is prohibited, Afkol Pri Gomer, also every completed fruit is prohibited. Amrasim came So then what's the Torah adding on? If you want to say it's adding on the anavim lechem v'yavashim, the fresh and the dry grapes, haksivi. If that's written explicitly, if you want to say it's adding on yaim, that's haksivi. The wine and vinegar is written. So you're coming to say it's coming to include the boser and the anavim that have wormy. So the Gemara says umeachar shesofenu arabas called ovar. So since it's going to include everything, why does the verse need to say mechartzanim v'adzag, from the skins till the seed? Afterwards, what's that adding on? So So it's to teach us a general rule. Anytime you have a limitation followed by a general rule, you can't pull it and judge that it's adding on something similar to the prat. But that in general, the general rule is adding on to the specific. Until the Torah limits it, like it limits it by a Nazir from the Chartzanim until the Zag. So the Gemara says, so the Gemara is going to go into question now. Rebbe Lazar's position. We'll have to. There's no real great place to stop over the next 2 days. It's really like an ongoing conversation. But we'll stop here. If anybody has a question, I'll be happy to address it.